Hello, guys. This is Leszek Somochowski with Fitness Soul Podcast. Thank you very much for tuning in. Today, I'm meeting with John Hedge from Access Parkour.
Reddit's an online news aggregation program. So you just go to a website and there's lots of different stories. But they have this thing called AMA, Ask Me Anything. And so celebrities, pop stars, politicians, whatever, go on and try and promote whatever they want. And they always get asked, would you rather fight 1,000 duck-sized horses or one horse-sized duck?
And it's kind of a random question, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's the sort of point, really.
Okay. And what's the answer?
Me?
So what's your answer then?
I'd rather fight one horse-sized duck. Because
Uh-huh.
I like dealing with things one at a time. Like 1,000 duck-sized horses, that's crazy. Like, they'd just be all over the place. But the one horse-sized duck, like, you got an object. Like, I've got to kill that thing, I'm going to win. To me, that seems more sensible.
But it's 1,000 ducks, it feels like 1,000 kids here. It's like, do you feel like that sometimes here in this place when you're teaching kids?
Generally, we have up to about 20 kids at one time, and then I have assistants, so it's not too bad. But sometimes we have 20 kids in. We had the family fun day on Saturday when there was about 50 doing one thing or another around here. There was some circus going on, there was some aerial going on, there was some parkour going on, and that was mad. But I was paying other people to do that, you see. So I was standing around looking confused, drinking coffee, and they were all working, which is, that's the dream, right?
To some extent, yeah, you're right. So you teaching kids, what you teach mostly here? Because this is like the place, you opened it like, you said me like 8
months.
8 months ago. And your main thing is the parkour.
Yeah, so I'm a parkour coach by trade. We have parkour classes on 4 days a week in here, and we teach mostly under 12s. That's our biggest age group, but we have a good group of under 8s, under 18s, and adults. So you can basically, it's open for everyone. So you can come anytime and. No, it's not open for everyone. There's set class times. This is a teaching space. So it's not like a gym where you can just drop in. Apart from on Sunday evenings, that's when we have our open session. But that's again for adults only, really. So when you start teaching, because it's like parkour is getting very, very popular at this moment. But I think you've been doing this for a long time. So I started parkour 13 years ago now. Did you call it parkour at this point, or just? That's when we started calling it parkour. I mean, my background's in long distance running, so when I was a teenager, I was up to 10k. So not really long distance, but for a teenager, it was pretty long. So I was powerful and fast, and I was doing a lot of middle distance. So I have some Edinburgh School, Scottish School medals for 400 meter, 800 meter, and long jump. So I was a bit of a middle distance, and then I was qualified to run for Scotland actually in cross country in 2004 maybe 5 something like that. Anyway, but from there I found parkour, and it was just a cool thing we saw online. Me and my friend, he was like, "Do you want to try this?" And I went, "Yes." And the years rolled by, and I kept doing it. It was just this stupid, fun, mad thing we did. And I went to university. Instead of, studying, I often went jumping instead. And then I went to do a PhD. And instead of doing my PhD, I spent the entire time learning to be a coach and coaching. And then I dropped out of my PhD because I was doing no work because I was coaching, and became a full-time parkour coach. That's superb. I didn't know about your background, the running background. Yeah. It makes you even much closer to me, because at this moment I mostly do running. This is where I'm finding my way. Let's call it this way. But so how do you feel any? Why you decided to do it? Why running wasn't enough for you? Do you still get running? I get you still get running in parkour as a part of it. I think I ran I ran regularly until I was about 25. And the main thing that stopped me was I was so busy trying to make Access Parkour take off that I couldn't be tired as much anymore. Because one of the absolutely beautiful, amazing things about running is you get nice and tired and you fall asleep. But when your job is incredibly physical, which mine is, if you are constantly tired, you do a bad job and no one comes to your classes, and then if you don't do a good job, then you're not a coach, you're just some guy standing by himself in the middle of town.
Because most of your classes are outdoor, like it used to be.
Right, these days it's half and half. We adjusted, I think, mostly to the Scottish weather. Especially in winter, the numbers were just so low outdoors that, it was really quite unreasonable to only teach outdoors. And so in winter, the indoor classes peak. And right now we're actually seeing the transition. Suddenly our outdoor classes are nice and busy.
And is this like, I check your website and it's like you've got a lot of coaches there. Are there all coaches are like kind of under you? So you are the main guy in the room and then you just teaching them, or it just comes like, is there any training program for the parkour at this moment, or you're just doing this?
So parkour is the UK's newest official sport. So it's officially recognised by all the sports governing bodies. Ours is called Parkour UK, and they have a qualification, which is called the ADAPT qualification, which has a UKCC recognition, which means it's like football or any other sport you can care to mention. So we have level 1 assistant coaches and then level 2 full coaches. And I have now 6 level 2s and 5 level 1s, all of whom work for me to one extent or another. Right now I believe that 7 of them are employed, which means they're teaching regularly enough that they went through the rigmarole of getting employed rather than working as self-employed individuals. 3 of us are realistically full-time.
Okay. And you do this, is it all these guys are working from here, or are they working in different places as well?
Those people are all based in Edinburgh.
Okay. And it's like, I've seen you do a lot of stuff at schools, and is it gymnastic clubs as well, or where's the line between? You know where I'm going. You know where I'm going.
Let's answer those one at a time.
Okay.
Schools. We're in 16 schools teaching 30 hours of parkour a week right now. So we're seeing roughly 350 children every week within schools, mostly as after-school programs. So that's... they finish school, they go to parkour club for an hour, and then they go home. It works really well. With regards to gymnastics, we don't tend to work in gymnastics spaces because they're not really suited to what we do. Parkour's, one of its distinctions from gymnastics is that it works in concrete environments. So you can't really teach the skills of parkour in a soft environment because the entire point is how to move when you don't have soft things. So it's a bit of a contradiction to try and teach in those situations. There are people that disagree and they take the parkour movements indoors, but what I find the problem with that is I know lots of people who do that and they go outside and they can do very impressive things, but because they're used to landing on soft things, they mechanically move like they expect the concrete to compress. I don't know if you've ever tried. Concrete doesn't compress. So if you're slamming hard into concrete, you're just damaging your joints and you're damaging your body.
And it probably takes only one mistake and you are gone.
Yeah, to some extent. I don't think that's a sustainable way of teaching parkour. If you work on an attrition perspective, which is if you survive, you can continue, you're not really doing the job of a coach.
So you said that parkour is a sport, as a recognized sport, but for you it's not sport anymore. How do you? Because I know you've got a way of describing this a little bit different than other people, which is it's amazing. I really agree with it. Although I think the competition is good as well from time to time.
I'm not against competition as a concept, to be absolutely clear. Competition is a fundamental aspect of humanity, and we're not about to tell you can't compete. What I object to is when competition invade non-competitive spaces. Because yes, you can make most sport competitive, and you can use competition to teach children how to strive to be their best, and you can use it as a way of measuring yourself, as a way of motivating yourself. These are great things about competition, and you can't live your life without competition, because then you're not really learning about the human experience.
Mm-hmm.
But with all that being said, there should be spaces which aren't competitive. Parkour is one of those spaces. Parkour is a non-competitive discipline about improving yourself. That's the point.
Mm-hmm.
And if you then make it competitive, you're just making it like almost every other space.
Is
And
it not like you're doing just different thing? And it's shouldn't we call it differently? Like maybe
Sure.
Yeah.
Ninja Warrior is a great example.
Oh, there we go.
That's not parkour. But parkour athletes go and do it, and they have great fun. It's fantastic. But my problem lies when you make it look like parkour, sound like parkour. You do it in parkour gyms, but then you call that a different name. You're doing a parkour competition.
Just to explain, people who don't know what we're talking about, is there what's happened? Is like 2020, the parkour might become Olympic sport, isn't it?
The International Federation of Gymnastics has
Mhm.
had a meeting with the International Olympic Committee, I think, or some other Olympic committee body, with the idea of including a combination of parkour and obstacle course sprint and obstacle coursing into the Olympics.
Mhm.
They're doing it through the support of a group in America called Apex International, who have a competition format called Obstacle Course Sprint, which is short routes in effectively parkour equipment.
Mhm.
And they run these competitions and have been running these competitions in America for many years, and they call it time trial or obstacle course sprint or something other than parkour. The problem being they're running competitions based on parkour movements on parkour equipment in parkour gyms, and they say it's not parkour because they're not calling it parkour.
Okay.
You can see where they're coming from, but it's also very see-through. It's a way of turning parkour into competition because there's commercialization value in that concept. I understand all of those things, but parkour is a non-competitive discipline for a number of reasons. Because it's non-competitive, it allows us to teach values that don't match up well with competition. For instance, one of the things we spend a lot of time teaching in our classes is for children to not cheat when they play games. Your average 10-year-old, especially a competitive 10-year-old boy, will cheat wherever possible in a game in order to win. But when you remove the competitive aspect of the game, they slowly stop because they begin to realize that there's no point in cheating because the aim is to complete it with these values and these rules. And a big aspect of playing games and development within children is the idea that when they play the games, they must follow rules. That's how a lot of developmental psychologists describe games. And when a child doesn't follow the rules of their games, they don't actually end up fulfilling their desires. And the point of play is to fulfill desires as a general rule.
Mm-hmm.
So a good example, a basic example, is if a child wants to ride a horse but can't because they're 4 years old, they grab a stick and they ride a horse.
Mm-hmm.
If a child then makes the rule, the stick is a horse, their wish is fulfilled by riding the stick. And they're fulfilled by that. If a child breaks the rules because they want they want to fulfill their desire so fast that they won't subsume themselves within a rule, then they say they're riding a horse without the stick, and then they're not so fulfilled and they're not so happy. So they cheat and cheat and cheat and cheat, but it doesn't fulfill them.
Mm-hmm.
And then what you have is a situation where the children are a little bit unbalanced and their abstract thoughts not developing properly, and you've got some psychological issues developing. And I've wandered off in a rant about, psychology.
That's good,
I
that's
just
good.
got a
It's
bit
all
carried
good.
away there.
That's
My bad.
Fascinating. That's good. Is it your PhD was in psychology?
No, my
or?
PhD was in material science.
Okay.
I just read books.
It looks like you are deeply interested in this topic.
I think for me, I try and live the values I espouse. And so one of the values I have is always trying to improve. And in order to do that, because parkour is so new, there's not a lot of resource on how to be a parkour coach. So to a certain extent, we're making it up as we go along. The first thing I began really focusing on and learning was how to make sure the movements were mechanically sound. So the movements we teach don't hurt people, don't damage people. a lot of movements that people do, especially those involving a lot of torsion, can be quite damaging on joints. And if you're landing and you're not doing it correctly, it's, for instance, people with poor squat technique tend to damage their knees or their backs. These things, obviously, you as a gym owner know. You know, you teach them how to do it correctly so they don't hurt themselves. These things apply to parkour massively. And so the first thing I did was learn that. And I've kind of, I think, got most of it down. I mean, I don't think we're done with that, but I think that I understand that. And so now I'm really beginning to try and figure out how to teach children such that they are growing up into confident adults with values that help them succeed in life.
And I think this is amazing because when I came here, when I thought about talking to you about the parkour, I watch a lot of movies on the YouTube, and I saw people jumping and doing crazy things. And what you're saying here, it's completely different look at this, which is I really like it. I'm the teacher. I used to be a PE teacher, and then working with kids from very small age, teaching them basics. I think this is the most important and crucial thing. And doing crazy shit, it's fine, but this is where I changing my thinking, my understanding the parkour and how you operate.
So to be clear, the guys doing the crazy shit are also doing parkour. Like that's a very physical expression of the concept, which is to improve yourself. But when they go and they figure out how to do these amazing physical acts, they are pushing the boundaries of what's possible for themselves, and they are trying to achieve something. And that's a very physical expression of what we're talking about. But, of course, not everyone does it perfectly. Some of them maybe go too far and do things which damage themselves, and that's a learning process they're going through. And you could argue if their values are about getting this movement over doing it safely, maybe they're not. But to my personal belief is that they're all doing parkour.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are not doing as well as others, but they're all doing parkour to me.
So how you make the kid who's coming here, and obviously he watched everything.
Oh yeah.
And he's 12 years old. Let's say Billy. He's coming to
Billy.
your gym. Yeah, let's call him.
12-year-old Billy, got it.
Yeah, he comes here and he was, I want to do this crazy move. And you say, no, Billy. First of all, you're gonna learn a squat for a year.
Games. Games are the trick there. Children want to play games. Children will naturally play games. So what we do is we've built... adults also play games. Yeah, adults love games too. But specifically, it's the way to... So that's an interesting... I'll get to that in a minute. Mm-hmm. Too many questions. Guys, slow down.
I'm sorry. My brain just goes too quickly.
With a young child, the way we format our classes for them is we will teach them a movement, make sure they're doing the movement right, and we'll maybe get 20 minutes before they get sort of itchy. And then what you do is you start applying that movement in games. You make sure your coaching points are strong. You're getting a phone call.
I'm sorry.
Now he's lost the phone call.
Now I lost. No. This was some.
That's totally going on the podcast because I'm halfway through a rant.
No. Obviously it's going.
Yeah.
It's going. I'm just checking now. If I just take the second. Yeah, it's a recording.
Can you imagine if this whole thing hadn't been recorded?
It's been done. It's been done before.
Excellent.
So we've got So with Billy.
Billy's getting edgy now because I've made him spend 20 minutes on how to jump and land. So you begin applying that in a game. It doesn't matter. I mean, the games we play are playground games. They're don't touch the ground, or the floor is lava, or Simon Says, or Ninja Grandma Wolf. They call it different things. They move and they're quiet, and we invent all sorts of playground games and they play them. Mm-hmm. And by playing these games, because we've been reinforcing the rules first and we then apply them in the games, and we just keep a little bit taught on the coaching points through the game, the children are playing and having fun and practicing skills. Mm-hmm. And at the end of it, you just make sure they know that they can get to backflips, they can get to the cool stuff, they can get to the huge things. You make sure that's available to them. But right now, in order to get there, they must first be here. I think most 12-year-olds will accept that you don't walk into a parkour class and learn backflip on your first day.
I'm sure you've got some
of them do.
Who tried.
Oh, yeah. And we mostly poke and prod them towards the correct way of doing things by telling them that while you can do a backflip, what you just did is dangerous and will have long-term implications for you. learn to become stronger with your legs by doing the landing work, and you will be able to do a backflip safely, and you'll be able to do a backflip for much longer, and they ignore you. But they come back because it was fun.
So the play is the key.
I think
so that's why they coming back.
I think the play. There's two concepts there. One is that as a general rule, people remember the worst bit and the end of a class more clearly than anything else. And especially if the end of a class has a game in it and is fun, then they remember that and they want to come back. And the other one is that the children naturally play anyway. And so if you sort of make sure the parents know that they are learning to do those things they're doing safely, and the kid seems to be having fun, you tend to have a return customer. And that tends to be good. And leads to one of the questions we were asked online, which is where do you find the balance between having fun and teaching? And that also comes to what you were asking about adults. Because if an adult comes to a class, they are spending their money and they want to improve. So for an adult to come to a class, they have an expectation that you will help them. And so you don't have to, but to a certain extent, you can push them hard throughout the class. You can make sure they're not having that much fun, so long as there is a reward. If they become fitter or stronger and better, you're doing your job. And then a child is different. For a child, if the child had no fun for an hour, even if the child became better, the child's not coming back to your class because they hated it. So
unless they got really pushy parent, and then this is where we're seeing in sports environment. So
I've heard a really terrible story actually about a woman I know whose daughter is a very good gymnast, and the daughter cries before going to most gymnastics classes. She seems to have perfectly good fun when she's there, but she doesn't like going to gymnastics classes. She's a very, very talented, top tier 8-year-old gymnast, but she'll regularly be in tears begging to not be sent to gymnastics class. That doesn't sound healthy to me.
It doesn't. There must be some balance there. I think the kids are, if you let them to do everything they want, to some extent, they would never do anything. It's a little bit of push is fine, I think, but too much. It's again gymnastics. I think gymnastics and ballet and all these things which involve a lot of practice to be good are not the best.
I think it's very difficult to. The way I would see it is the children really have no way of telling you what they want, in terms of they don't really understand the long-term implications of a lot of the things they're doing. So if I send my child to gymnastics from the age of 4 to the age of 10, they're going to be physically set up for life, unless they break.
Yeah.
They're going to be strong, they're going to be flexible, they're going to have all these great things that are going to last most of their lives, no doubt. But they won't necessarily enjoy the experience that much, and that child doesn't get to have a really grasp of the huge decision you're making on their behalf, which is, I'm going to force them to a certain extent to go to this class and do all this hard work so that they have a better chance later in life. Or I'm not going to force them to do something they don't want to do because it's their choice, and then they'll regret giving it up for years because they didn't want to. A 5-year-old threw a tantrum.
So I can see how the parkour it's jumping there in between, where they almost get the same skills or even more skills than in gymnastics, and you can still make it fun, and it's still.
Yeah, I think I see parkour as a balance, but I also see parkour as a way of convincing the children they want to do it themselves, because that's really important to me, and it's really important because this is one of the reasons why I'm a big fan of removing competition from that environment. Within this environment, I can have a conversation with the children about values, about hard work, about self-esteem, about confidence, about risk assessment is a huge one. I spend huge amounts of time talking with the children about what is and isn't safe and letting them figure it out for themselves. And because we're in an environment where they don't have to beat each other, that's much easier and convinces them. And then instead of having a value imposed on them, it's a value they hold. And therefore, I've got some 8, 9-year-old kids in my class, I've been teaching her for a few years, who will call out other children for cheating because there's no point.
Mm-hmm.
And that's now a value they hold intrinsically, rather a value that's imposed on them by the environment. And I think that's really important, because by doing that, you end up developing people who have positive relationships with physicality and exercise and also with challenge. And they're not going to grow up afraid to try. They're actually going to grow up engaged and hardworking. And that's really important to me.
That's good. That's good. Right. Something about you. So we talk a lot of do you still practice parkour or practice movement, and you still pushing yourself, or you more? Is it important for you as well? Because I can see how important is it. Someone is coming.
That's probably Rob. Don't worry about him.
Okay. Well, we'll see. We'll just say hello. Hello, Rob. How are you doing? Right. So, is it still important for you to get better every day? You said this, but it's in terms of movement. Do you still pushing this?
I think that it's very hard to remain motivated to train parkour when it's your full-time job. But luckily, movement skills as a whole are so wide-ranging that even though I'm teaching how to jump, how to land, how to vault, how to swing every day, there's huge things that interest me that I can do instead that still count.
Mm-hmm.
So for instance, 2 years ago I decided to learn to do a handstand. I was rubbish at handstands. Now I can hold a really nice handstand. And I was able to motivate myself to practice the handstands because it was a bit different. So you find something similar and focus on it. So for instance, sometimes I'm still motivated to do parkour. I still do parkour training in terms of jamming probably twice a week. Mm-hmm. But my day-to-day training is mostly about keeping healthy and achieving goals that interest me. So I do a lot of stretching, a lot of mobility work. I do a lot of strength and stabilizing work. I make sure that I'm healthy enough that I can continue doing my job. And I play around with my friends and look at new movements and fall over and do silly things and do big swings. But I don't really care about becoming the best anymore. It's not something that pushes. I don't want to be physically the most awesome. I want to be fit and active for a long time, and therefore the way I train changes.
I think it comes with the experience and years.
The age, yeah.
Can I ask how old are you?
I'm 28 right now.
You're 28. So you realize I'm 35, and I just start getting. I'm realizing this now that I was talking about this last time with Ali, that all my life I was trying to push and to be the best. And it wouldn't never happened. It's in this sport I choose, and it was either I wasn't practicing enough or I was interested in too many things, so just jumping. And now just shifting my focus on getting better, and thinking I've got this mantra that I want to do things when I'm 90 as well. This allows me to train much less, but with more fun in it.
Yeah.
So do you notice mobility stuff? Do you do a lot of mobility in terms of, like, what's your routine in the morning? Do you do something like that?
My morning routine?
Yeah.
My morning routine is I wake up and I pull my other half out of bed and we go for a 20-minute walk, which is a lovely way to start your morning.
Oh, yeah.
When I train mobility, I tend to do a general joint warm-up.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'll find I'm doing contract, release, static stretching over the areas that get tight. Stretching is very important for parkour practitioners because we do a power sport. And therefore, if you don't stretch, you get tight. And if you get tight, you break.
Yeah.
So what I tend to do is I tend to make sure that 4 or 5 times a week, I'm spending 20 minutes or longer mobilizing the bits of me that get tight, which are mostly the front and back line of the legs,
Mm-hmm.
and the shoulders. One of the things I think is most useful for my upper body and shoulders is I spend a lot of time hanging. Anyone who spends any time at a desk should discover hanging, by the way. It's one of the healthiest things in the world.
It's amazing for the shoulders.
Yeah, the shoulder is designed to hang. We're left over with this monkey shoulder from years of living and developing on trees. Then we got onto the plains and stopped using them. But in order to keep a really healthy shoulder, the easiest way, especially if you work at a desk where you're hunched over, is to spend lots and lots of time with your arms up here hanging.
Have you? Sorry to interrupt you. Have you heard about this guy, this doctor in US who decided he was a surgeon? He was opening people.
He started shooting people by asking them to hang.
Yeah,
yeah,
and it works. It works.
It can, yeah.
And people hate it. You're like,
oh, it's
every time when someone is coming to the gym, you ask him, listen, you've got this sore in the shoulder, just go hang. And he's like, I cannot do it. It's too hard.
So we have a class called Back in the Game. I teach it on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. And it's meant to be as accessible as a class can possibly be. So it's designed that it doesn't matter how broken you are, you come to this class, you get back in the game. Which, as a concept, has been really interesting. I've been teaching this class for 3.5 years now, and it's changed massively. Because you'd be impressed at how broken some people can be. But then they come and they begin to, like, I've had people who are on the transplant list for replacement knees come, and the improvement of their mobility around the hip and knee has been amazing. And mostly what we do with them is we make them stretch their hips, and we make them hang, and we make sure their cores work. And as simple as that is, it makes a huge difference to a lot of people, and the hanging is a big part of that, because people do not raise their arms above their heads, and if they do, they usually engage the trap, which it hurts.
Yeah.
And if you just teach them how to do it properly, and they do it a bit more regularly, the body adapts. Anything you do with the body, it adapts to do. If all you do with the body is make it sit in a chair, your body becomes a very good chair.
Yeah.
If you hang, even irregularly, your body adapts so that it can hang, which causes a very distinct change in the way the connective tissue is built up in your shoulder, and then you are likely to be exposed to a lot less pain.
So if someone watching this and they just want to start, and they don't do parkour, they don't do anything at this moment, they're sitting at the desk. So we've got covered, we've got hanging. Would you start with them with hanging, or?
I'd recommend they come along to one of our Back in the Game classes. But if they live in Croatia, okay,
they can just watch this.
Hi, how you doing?
It's Marco.
Marco
from Croatia.
Hey, Marco. I actually know someone called Mirko from Croatia, so maybe him.
Yeah, maybe him. Okay, talk to him then.
The first thing to do is to assess what hurts, and then to try and figure out how to fix it. If you have lower back pain, the most common thing to have for lower back pain is a pelvis tilted backwards, anteriorly tilted. The top of the pelvis tilts forward, that's why it's anterior. If your pelvis tilts backwards, then learning to engage the core properly can alleviate back pain in minutes.
How can I do it? How Marco can do it?
How can Marco do it? If he lies down.
Well, let's just move this.
If he lies down.
Okay. 2 seconds.
Hey.
Right.
Okay, so Marco, if you lie down, you should feel a big hole in your back. Okay? If you tilt your pelvis forward, the hole goes away. That's called engaging the core. If you do a core workout with your pelvis tilted all the way back here, you are mostly using what's called your hip flexor to do the work. Your hip flexor, when it gets short, gives you back pain. If you learn to engage your core and hold it and use it, then by using this muscle, you alleviate tightness in here simply structurally by moving bits of your bones, and therefore your back pain will begin to go away.
And then obviously you can extend your legs and do all this stuff.
Exactly.
Cool. Okay, so Marco got the core a little bit stronger, but he always got a little bit tightness in his neck because he's staring at the screen all the time.
He probably therefore has a kyphosis.
So what he does about this?
The kyphosis is when your head comes forward like this.
Because
you're staring down. And the important thing to do is not to raise the head up, is to push it back.
Just push it back.
Which will often lead to you looking like this, which is a bit odd, and then learning to go from here to here. People really do struggle with that. I suppose the first thing to do there would be to potentially spend some time hanging, and then get a good neck massage, and then just learn how to raise the head, which you can actually do on the floor as well. And you just build from as low as possible. You keep going backwards until they start doing things properly.
Okay, last thing. He also got the problem with knees. He's
There's a
just
few reasons why you can have knee problems.
like cracking all the time, you know. He goes down, and it's like you can feel this cracking, and he doesn't like it.
Well,
That's why he stopped doing squats.
yeah. There's a few problems. He might have collapsed arches.
Mhm.
Collapsed arches can happen structurally because the muscle's not there, or because he's just not using the muscle. And the first thing to do would be to generate torque. That's a Kelly Starrett term. If you've not read Kelly Starrett's books, you really should. They're fantastic.
Someone just took one of my books and never give it back to me.
Disgraceful.
For a
Year.
I'm still waiting for this book to come back to me.
He's written a few good books. Supple Leopard's the one that I've mostly referenced. Generating torque simply means turning the knee out slightly. And what that does is it stabilizes the knee, because when the knee is turned out and twisted, it's stable because of the way just because of the structural shape of the bones. And when it's turned in, you put pressure on what's called the ACL ligament. And you've probably heard of someone who's torn their ACL. People tear their ACLs all the time, and it's mostly either because their hip's too tight to get that knee out, or because their arch is collapsed, so their knees coming in.
Knee collapse in, and then it happens with the girls mostly when they
It does. That's often a
working.
glute medius issue. One of the muscles in their back chain and their bum is just not activating properly, which causes these knocked knees. And I think it's also just a societal thing. Like, unsurprisingly, women are discouraged from spending large amounts of time like this.
And instead of that, they need to cross the legs.
Yeah, so they need
And
to. And of course, this here means that, of course, my glute medius isn't working. And if I spend my entire life with my glute medius not working, my glute medius doesn't work. That's sort of the end of that discussion. If you're not using a muscle, it stops working.
Mhm. So it's just a matter of teaching, pushing the. He's saying he talks about the opening the feet, isn't it? Like the spreading the floor
that
with
penguin style.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, well, he kind of.
But by creating the force, you create the force from the ankles up.
Yeah, K-Star likes to talk about it as in sort of a twisting motion. I tend to think about it as just I let them completely flatten the heel and then come back out, and they sort of do it quite naturally. But it's just about finding someone who knows what they're talking about and watching YouTube videos and
then learning from there.
Yeah, and then one of the really nice things about that is if you fix a structural issue like that, then you spend your life walking or moving using the new structure, then you'll adapt to it really quickly because your body adapts. And if you suddenly start using your foot properly, you might notice huge changes throughout your entire chain. The way I always talk about it is even the most dedicated athletes, amateur athletes anyway, probably spend maximum 2 hours a day training. Realistically, you're not going to spend much more than that training. Whereas you spend 24 hours of your life living. So if the changes you're making to your body last beyond your sporting time, then it will have a greater impact on you as a person structurally than anything you can do in those 2 hours.
That's very true. Yeah, it's like sitting and walking and even sitting on the toilet. Yeah, it's using this as a squatting. You're gonna have a lot of squats during the day.
There's a woman named Katie Bauman. Have you ever read her books?
No.
She's a biomechanist, but she's quite popular, and she writes in a pop culture style. And one of the things she loves is her squatty potty. It makes a surprising difference to people's lives if they can squat. In fact, it removes a lot of bowel issues if they get deep into their squat to poo.
Yeah.
I personally don't do that one, but I understand the value of it.
You probably would be banned from everything. Everywhere. I saw the picture like that, so you shouldn't be squatting on the desk. But doesn't matter. Let's move back. So we've got Marco is sorted. Now we've got someone from Edinburgh. You've got your classes back to the how you call it? The
back in the game.
Back in the game classes. They are which days are they on?
Tuesday 7 o'clock up at Mary Erskine School, and then Wednesday 8 o'clock here. Both are quite busy right now, but we always welcome new members.
Can people just pop in, or they need to book in online?
You can just drop in. We do recommend they book in because if enough people book in, then I hire a second coach. And if I hire a second coach, I pay another coach. So they book in means that one of my coaches eats that night. That's how they have to think about it.
And they will have better quality class. obviously.
Yeah.
Because there will be a little bit more attention to them.
Yeah.
Okay, so the link will be under this thing.
Yeah.
I was thinking, do you still need to go at 11? Or
I do need
by
to leave
11?
quite soon.
You need to.
I need to leave in the next 5 minutes, realistically.
Did we sort all the questions from your friends? We had the one about the horses. We had the.
Oh, the orbital velocity of the moon. I was asked that. The orbital velocity of the moon is it rotates around the Earth once every 28 days. If you want to solve it, you can just use units from there.
Or just Google it. Anyway, if you have to go, let's wrap up a little bit.
No worries.
Quite quickly. Thank you very much for doing this. I had great. I think I learned a lot from you, and then I
That's always a big compliment. Thank you.
yeah that's, and I will be really happy to sending people your way, people who are kind of not fitting maybe to my place. And we said this before, that we are so close to each other that, and then we kind of doing the same thing but a little bit different. So
It's different enough that we can definitely trade clients, though, because it's people who come to my class who want to learn to lift kettlebells or do things with equipment and squats. We don't really offer that here, and your place has tons
and
of that.
this is what we do. And then otherwise, when
then
people
there's
coming for the movement,
Yeah, you've got the Zumba, and then you've got Ranich, who does something crazy all the time.
conditioning.
Yeah.
This boxing conditioning mostly these days, and kettlebells. And for the movement calisthenics, we started some calisthenics movement before, but it's not my thing.
Okay.
I thought it's gonna be my thing, but it's not. So I will be just sending people to your
Brilliant.
way. Anyway, John, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Awesome. Good job.
Sweet.
Sweet. All right, that's done. The chat with John was amazing. He's a great guy. He knows so much about movement and parkour and other things. Like we could talk forever about the kids' education and values and the movement and mobility and injury prevention. We covered it all, and 45 minutes, it was enough. I'm sure he could talk about those topics for another 5 hours. So I will try to catch up with him one more time at some point. Thank you very much for your questions. I hope we managed to answer them all. If not, I will get John to answer them later under the podcast. So if you enjoyed that, please make sure you share this podcast with other friends, with your friends, and like it on iTunes or like it on the YouTube.